now. No, my arm has not fully recovered. And I was unimpressed a couple of weeks ago when the surgeon told me, you're not going to get full movement back for 12 months. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's full, complete, movement like it was before. I can do a lot, but um, yeah, it's annoying. All right, so what I wanted to do was start with looking at some slides. I might remake these as a proper video at some point, and I can flesh them out with any questions that you guys might have, and then I will show you, give you a demo of the exam. All right, of course, we all know Thursday, 3rd of December. Wow, that's only 9 days' time. So we know it's a 12-hour duration. Questions will be open at 10 a.m. and I'll ignore anything that's submitted after 10 p.m. I would suggest that you don't leave starting until 8 p.m. because then you've only got 2 hours to finish. So start work before 6 p.m. and if you want to start at 10 a.m. finish by lunchtime and then have the rest of the day off, go for it. Of course, you could always come back. You could work for a couple of hours, have lunch, and then do some more work. Anyway, that's up to you, and it's maybe determined a little bit by other exams that you might happen to have on that day. All right, so we submit answers via Give and WebCMS3. For the sample exam, I haven't yet set these up. I will, but that's just for fun. I'm not going to look at anything you submit for the sample exam. Of course, for the real exam, I will look at it. You can always, people say, can you submit your answer more than once? Yes, you can submit as many times as you like, but we're only going to look at the last submission. You can submit any time you like. I would suggest that you submit an answer as soon as you finish the question. And don't do this because as we've seen in exams in term 2, if everyone tries to submit at the last minute, the whole system grinds to a halt. I think we've worked out a fix for that anyway, but you don't want to get stuck in the last minute traffic jam. All right, so I reckon, well, when I've written the exam, which I haven't done yet, I reckon it will be about 3 hours worth of work. So that means you've got 12 hours and you've only got to spend 3 hours of that. You can spend that 3 hours whenever you like. You can do 1 hour, have a 1 hour break, do another hour, have another break, do another hour, have a break, do another hour. Ha, that's 4 hours, of course, not 3 hours for me. For me, it'd take half an hour. This is how this is how we estimate these things. No, it wouldn't take me half an hour, but it wouldn't take me 3 hours either. The last few exams I've said, people have typically taken between 3 and 4 hours total. But some people did it in 2 hours, so there you go. So there'll be 7 prac questions, 5 written questions, some of which look vaguely practice. They're not. I deliberately didn't write the word theory because then you'll all think, they're all normalization or serializability. No, they can be other things, design type questions, etc. And you can see that in the sample exam. I reckon you're best doing this on a home computer and minimizing your reliance on the network, unless you've got a fabulous network connection. Then I've been a little bit surprised that some people have said they have very flaky network connections, even in the middle of the Sydney metro area. Then again, that's the NBN rollout for you. I have trouble downloading map. Yes, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal is to have Postgres on your home computer. If you can't do that, then you can log into Greek. VLab, I would be once again a little bit wary unless you've got a very good network connection. I've heard that people with not great network connections have trouble with VLab. SSH requires absolutely, well, very light network connection. Oh, God. VS Code, I hate VS Code. VS Code is a giant, fat resource hog. If you can avoid using it during the exam, don't use it. You can do the whole thing with a simple text editor like VI. Yes, I know they do. God knows why. I don't know. Anyway, you're dealing with single files. I can see VS Code might be useful if you're having multi-file projects, but in this context, you're just editing one file at a time. So I don't see much benefit to that. And hey, if you want to have syntax highlighting, then, well, turn on syntax coloring in VI. So the exam paper is a collection of web pages. If you've had a look at the sample exam, you would have seen that. And what we give you to use in the exam is a collection of answer template files. We'll have a look at them in a moment. A database dump. It'd be hard to ask you database questions if we didn't give you one. The reason we give you a dump is you'll have to set up the database yourself, and especially if you're working at home, you obviously need some way to set up the database and a check script so you can do testing. I mean, you don't need a check script technically, but it makes you feel better if you type check and then it says passed. Then you feel happy, then you submit the question and go on to the next one. All right, all of this stuff can be downloaded, obviously, if we're letting you work completely at home. You obviously need a copy of the exam paper, you obviously need the database, and you need the work templates. All right, so what do you need? So obviously we're presenting the exam paper as a collection of web pages. You need a web browser to read them, as if anyone doesn't have a web browser. I'd be interested to see if someone did the exam on their phone. That would be a neat trick. It'll be a little bit tedious, I suspect. You need a reasonably modern version of Postgres. I reckon you could probably get by. No, it doesn't have to, I'm sure. Oh, it can actually. Isn't there an SSH client for, well, certainly for iPhones? As I said, it's a bit painful to run Vim in a window where you've got 4 lines visible at a time, but in theory it's possible. Don't do it. Any recent version of Postgres will work. If you want to, I don't know, if you're mad and you want to try Postgres 13, that's your problem. We give you version 12 on Greek. Python needs 3.7, and you need a Python that has PyCoPG2 available, and you need space to create a database. And it's not going to be a gigantic database like IMDb, it'll be smaller than that. You can work on Greek, you could work potentially on the VLab servers, you could work on your home machine. If you're going to work on Greek, I would suggest setting up 2 terminal windows, one that's actually not running on Greek but running on some other CSV login server where you can edit your stuff and use the Greek window for testing. But you put both the terminals in the working directory. There will be some scope for using the VLab servers and actually running Postgres on the VLab servers. It doesn't use your /server setup, it actually, you have to install Postgres again, and it puts the files in /temp. Now /temp is not unlimited in size, so we can't have 300 people trying to run Postgres on one VLab server. And in fact, we couldn't have more than, say, 20 or 30 people running Postgres on any particular VLab server. So you might want to keep that in mind. Of course, a lot of people go to VLab and just use that as a way to get to Greek. But my point is that you can actually run Postgres on the VLab servers like VX2 or whatever. And of course, you can use your home machine. On Windows, I could load, but not IMDb. Well, I don't have access to a Windows machine to do that kind of testing. You could load MyMy. MyMy was smaller than IMDb, I think. Oh, one thing about IMDb, it had some non-ASCII characters in it, whereas I don't. Oh, maybe MyMy did as well. That might have caused a problem. But certainly the database in the exam won't have any non-ASCII characters. And it will be relatively small, so it ought to load. All right, Greek's fine as long as you haven't filled up your /server quota, which has happened to a few people. If you want, now that you've finished with assignment 3, you could always just delete your /server/u/pgsql directory and recreate it using pginit. And then you're guaranteed to have enough space. Can we just drop? Yeah, you can try that. How do we check? Good question. Let me just have to. There's a command called rquota, which we can tag. And we'll go to Brig. Let me just check. Server. This is the way I would normally check it. So check your quota from the file system where you currently are, dot being the current directory. Right, I didn't think I had that much disk quota. You guys certainly won't have, but if you find that the space usage is way smaller than your quota, then you should be okay. All right, get back to here. Oh yeah, all right. So as long as you haven't filled it up, as I said, all you do is just remove um, /server/u/pgsql and start again. If you're using the VLab servers, and when you reinstall your PG server, you need to run pginit, of course. If you're trying to use VLab to run, yeah, but you don't have as much space used, do you? See, looking at my quota, I only use 215 meg, and I believe, let's see, have I got a database server running? I've got all of those databases installed, and it's only taking up, allegedly, that much space. Another way of checking, actually, is to use the du command. And I use -s to get a summary. Just got to make sure, is that the directory I'm in? Yeah. -s for summary, H to give human readable form, and dot starting in the current directory. Yeah, okay, that's good. So that's consistent with what quota tells me. So that's apparently how much space I'm using for all of those databases. And I actually have a copy of IMDb and MyDB. Interesting, huh? And how much space, and pretty much all of that space lives in the PGSQL directory. Yeah, all right, getting back to the VLab servers, obviously if you're going to use VLab at all, whether you're running your database on the VLab server or whether you're just getting to Greek, you need a decent network connection. If you actually want to run Postgres on a VLab server, you'll need to run pginit to set up a database, because you won't be able to access I was about to say you won't be able to access /server. Maybe you will. Right, well, what you could do is you could log into a VLab server and try source/server/u/env, and then try running pgs start. Interesting. If that doesn't work, you can always set up a brand new server by running pginit, and what that will do, will set up a server not under /server, but on the /temp file system. And often under /temp, it means it runs a little bit faster. But as I said before, /temp has a limited amount of space, and we can't afford to have 100, 203 meg Postgres servers sitting on /temp on any given VLab server. I think there's about 6 VLab servers, and they're sort of load balanced so that when someone logs into a VLab server, they go onto one that doesn't have as many people currently logged into it. And you can always run things on your home machine, but make sure you check everything now. It would be worth trying to do the sample exam on your home machine if that's where you plan to do it in the real exam. Right, so once you get into the exam, read that big instructions page. Where is it? That's a good question. Yeah, this one. Right, so that's the first thing you're going to see. Don't cheat, otherwise we'll kill you. Well, we can't kill you, but we can certainly kick you out of UNSW. And then it tells you, gives you suggestions on how to set up your on-screen workspace. Normally I'd have maybe 3 windows, one for the browser, one for editing the files, and one for testing. But on this machine I've only got one window, or 2 windows, one for the browser, one for editing and testing the files, which works fine if you're a Vim using dinosaur. All right, so blah, blah, blah. It's probably worth keeping some of these pages open in your browser so you can have multiple tabs. You can see I've got dozens of tabs here, most of which have nothing to do with the exam. And then we've got the sample exam paper and a terminal window. All right, downloading. So you can download the exam paper, which is in fact what I've done here. So to do that, I find it easiest to right click. You can't see which button I'm pressing on the mouse, but a right mouse click button and then download linked file. I'm using Safari. I hope the same kind of thing works on Chrome. So that's what I did, and I downloaded these two things. Right, so setting up your working directory, basically, and you'll need to do this whether you're working at home or whether you're working on Grig or VLab. So let's zip. So that's now created a directory called work. I may as well unzip the exam paper as well. And that will, surprise, surprise, create a directory called paper. I happen to be doing this inside a directory that I created under my CS3311 working stuff. I just called it ZZZ. You can call it anything you like. It would make sense to call it exam. All right, so if I look in the paper directory, I've got all of these HTML files plus a few other files floating around, including diagrams and stuff. If I want, I can read the exam paper, and this is where I tried to do it earlier, but it didn't exist. Open the paper, open index.html, and that should, hooray, should pop up. What have I done wrong? Yeah. Oh, I see. Yes, I've got the file URL incorrect. All right. So that pops up the instruction sheet for the exam. Oh, bugger, this is still saying 100. I think the total marks available are 90. There's an interesting little bug that I need to track down, because this number here actually gets, in theory, put there by looking at these and adding them all up. So I don't know why these add up to 100. When it looks like they actually add up to 90. In any case, blah, 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 blah. Details are in the instruction page, all right, so you keep ending up back on this page if you click on that. The notes section talks about what's in the work directory, so that's useful to have a quick look at. Oh, I can't remember what Q10 was. What is Q10? Oh, it's okay, yeah, an efficiency analysis type question. All right, question 9, blah, blah, blah. So there's a bit of reading in some questions. The database, a description of what the database looks like. We won't be using this database in the final exam. I think because I've run out of questions to ask on this database, but it won't be more complex than this, if I remember. And of course you can access the course website. Notice that popped up another tab. So if I go back here, we've still got that set up. And documentation, I've got these summary sheets, but if you want, you can look at the full documentation for all of these things. So that's what's in Postgres, rather than trawling your way through the Postgres documentation. You might Actually, I didn't check this before I put these up. So I may want to revisit this just in case there's something. It's probably all right. Postgres hasn't changed that much since I wrote this. That also pops up a tab. So I've got the Postgres tab, I've got the course homepage tab, and then I've got the main things. All right, so we'll look at Q1. Write an SQL view that gives the country name and the name of each team, the number of matches it has played. I probably should have given a bit more information about what the view looks like, but I can easily find that out because I have in the work directory all these templates. So if I look at Q8, then I can see that there's something already set up. So there are two parts to question 8, I hope. Let's have a quick look. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, part A and part B. Right, getting back to Q1, all of the prac questions have a subdirectory where all of the stuff is contained. So I was looking at Q1. Let's go to Q1. So q1.sql is a template file which allows me to type stuff in. And here's where the definition, oh yeah, actually, the definition is in all of this instruction stuff. All right, so work on this question in that directory, define a view, blah, 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 load the view like that. I'm pretty sure that the check script will actually load the view for you, just in case you forgot. That raises the issue that Q2 check script is empty. Oh, is it? Okay. Well, in fact, all the check scripts are just symlinks to. Oh, that one's not. Wow. All right. So this needs fixing. Yeah, that's good. I really need myself. All right. In fact, in the real work directory, they're all just symlinks to this. That's surprising that that one isn't. All right. So I think I'm there. Because you reckon Q2. Oops. Oh yeah. Right. Well, this is how you fix it. All right. Hang on. I'll get to your question in a minute. Right, now the Q2 script is not what? What the? Oh, I did it. Yeah, that's all right. LN minus S. All right, so that checks it. Okay, I had a question about ordering for queries when creating a view for AS3, blah, da, 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 da. You don't need to worry about ordering because all of the tests will do the ordering for you. And if some of them haven't got an ordering at the moment, they all will have. So if we go into the test directory for question 1, in there you'll find shell script, which is the thing that runs the test, and the expected output from the test. Now all the test directories have 00 expected, which is basically just a thing. Leave it. It's a thing for checking whether, when you run check, whether it actually loads your q1.sql properly or not. Okay, so if we look at o1.sh, this contains a call to, interesting. All right, God. This is what happens when you try to adapt an old sample exam to a new format. You end up with some inconsistencies floating around. Right, so this is one way you could run the tests, and you can see that it does the ordering for you. So look at the form, order by ASCII. Yeah, yeah, maybe that would be a reason for testing your stuff on. So if you're working at the only time you're likely to have problems with collation, which is the way the ordering's done, and you can see that if you look here, where is it? Collation. So it's using that to decide how to order things precisely. If that was different to what's on Greek, then sure, you might get the results in a different order, even though you use order by. So I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. We'll be testing things on Greek, and since you don't have to do the ordering anyway, we'll be doing the ordering, so it'll take on whatever ordering is on Greek, which ought to match the expected results on Greek. That's where the expected results were generated, if they don't happen to match on your home machine. But you have the same set of tuples, then you should be all right. Right, so, and O1.expected, I can look at this to see what kind of results I'm expecting. Hopefully there's nothing going to go wrong with this ordering. That's pretty straightforward. All right, so if I go back here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start filling in my query. Let's see. So the team name is actually, teams are countries in this system. Let's give an incorrect answer. Teams. So this is going to give all the country names, but with a count of 1, presumably. So let's have a quick look. Oh, do I have a footy database? Oops, PSQL -L. I don't have a footy database. Oh, what a shame. I better make one before I can do anything. And there's footy.dump. So create the footy database, has to be called footy. Everything else is assuming that it is. And it builds the database. You can see it doesn't have a lot of tuples in, so it's not going to strain your disk storage. Right, let's go back to Q1. Now what I can do, or what I can try to do, is load my view into the database. Alright, so it loads it alright. That's a good start. PSQL footy, select. I won't bother ordering by team, I've got no idea. Alright, so that's what it's going to produce. As we saw, the test, the expected output and the test case ordered by team. So if I really wanted to, what I could do is I could run the test case myself. Like that. Oops, not like that, like that. And there you go, it runs, and this time you can see that it's put things in order. Still got the wrong number of matches, of course, because it's not actually counting the number of matches at all. And if I was then to run check, I have to give the name of the script. So what this is going to do, it's going to attempt to run it and it will fail. And then you can go and check the diffs, using diff. And I mean, if you bothered to do this, you pretty soon, if you bothered to look at then you'd see what you'd done once. You may not know what you've done wrong, but at least you'd see what the expected results were supposed to be. Let me see, one point I want to make about check is you can look at check if you want. It's just a shell script. It does a bunch of checking to make sure you're in the right directory. And then what it does, it loads in your SQL. Now it's going to do that every time you run a check, which is okay. It's really doing it just to make sure that you didn't forget to do it. But one side effect of that is if you've got extra views in here, you can't write them as just as create view. You need to write them as create or replace view always. Alright, so the other reason I wanted to type in this junk was to show you what happens. Check Q1. It will give you the error from the loading. Okay, so syntax error add or need bug. So if there's a problem in your q1.sql, it'll tell you what it is here and it won't even try to run the tests at all. So it loads up your q1.sql and then runs all of the tests that are in the tests directory. Now, since this is a view, there's not really much we can do. Hey, we could do order by team descending, but if you get it correct for order by team ascending, then clearly you're going to get the right answer for the descending case. So there's only one test for Q1. Something like this would actually load, or it should, and then you can see that it ran the test and the test failed. And I can use diff to, let's have a look, copy and paste diff. So every line is different. So Argentina 1 should be Argentina 54. So if you don't know how to read diff input, what this is basically saying is if I want to change the observed to the expected, I would remove this line and I'd remove this line and I'd remove this line and I'd add this line. So basically you'd replace all of the lines in observed by these to make it the correct answer. Yeah, you can do drop view if exists. Create or replace should work. Does not, yeah, of course. All right, fine, you can do drop view if you like. But just make sure that it's going to load when you run check. Anything that will make it load correctly when you run check is fine. You certainly won't be changing the column names for the main views, but yes, you're right, you might change column names for your helper views, if you have any. You don't need to have them. And I probably wouldn't have them. What's the answer for this one? Let's, have we got time to work it out here? Maybe. So how would I work it out? I'd start looking for the database. Right, how do I relate a team to a match? There's an involves relationship. And if I look down here at the schema, involves maps a team to a match. So all I've really got to do, I don't even need to look at the matches table because I'm simply counting how many matches they're involved in. So that points at the team. Yeah. Hopefully that's correct. Beautiful. And that's what you want to see. And then you say, you can go to, oh yeah, that's one thing that I haven't shown you. In the exam, this will be the front page, so that the final exam, we got the entry page, but there'll be a whole bunch of submission pages, one for each question. And you can click on that and you submit using Web CMS, or you can copy q1.sql to the CSE service and then give from there using the supplied give command. Let's go back here. No, it's easy to get lost, isn't it? Oh yeah, Q1. All right, so it tells you what give command to use, but you can also go to the Web CMS Q1 submission page when it exists. I'll add them later in the week for the sample exam. All right, what else? So all of those Q1 to Q7 directories have a template file. Let's have a look at one of the Python ones. Right, so Q6 is the Python script. You can see that we've got, what the hell, why didn't I do symlinks for all of these? Oh, I wonder if zip does something with symlinks. That's slightly annoying. Yeah, alright. So looks like it got rid of all the symlinks. Doesn't matter, it's the same script in each directory. Alright, so what happens here, you've got a Python script. Well, I've given you a bunch of stuff because I don't want to have questions during the exam. What's the usage? What message should I write? Blah, blah, blah. So I've got you to the point where we process the command line arguments. Obviously, that's not a database type thing anyway. And then we go down here, and this is where you put in the Python code to manipulate the database. All right, so that's pretty much all you have to do in here. If you want to have some helper function, Python helper functions, you can put them here. If you want to have some views to help you out, there's also view6.sql. So if you want to make a view especially for this script, that's fine. You can do that here. If you don't put anything in here, you've still got to submit. Is there a time limit for Python questions in the final exam? Yeah, 2 seconds. because they're all relatively straightforward. And you really have to put a time limit, otherwise some idiot will write an infinite loop and clag up some machine. I mean, it's already possible to clag up machines by doing buggy joins, which create very large intermediate results. Right, so I'm pretty sure that if I was going to look at Q6, it would say blah, 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 produce a bunch of match reports, tells you all about it. If something here isn't clear, look at the expected outputs. They more or less define what's correct. Right, so put the Python code in Q6, helper functions there, q6.sql. Don't forget to load up q6.sql. The check script will do that for you anyway, and then you run the script like that, and all of the tests will do that. So let's have a look. So here we've got 5 tests. Oops. More. And that's what they look like. Surprise, surprise. They run the script. Notice the quotes vary, doesn't matter. Maybe to avoid silly questions. Ignore, what does that mean? Extra input from the command line. Yes, obviously. That's one reason why I wrote all the command line handling for you, so I don't have to worry about questions like that. All you got to do is work with whatever that initial Python code has extracted from the command line. Yeah, well, maybe. So by the time you get to this point, you've got team and year, and you work with that. And if you don't, to get to this point, you have to have a valid team and a valid year. Well, not necessarily a valid year. You might have a year like 1999, in which case there are no matches for 1999 in this database, so you just print an empty report. And I think there's an example of that in the expected results. As I said, if you have questions like ignore extra input from command line, or what happens if it's an invalid year, have a look at the expected outputs. So let's see, test/start. I'm pretty sure. Right, so that should be valid, and print some stuff. That's valid, that's valid. Yeah, as I said, I'll change them all to use single quotes just to avoid people saying, oh, this one's got double quotes. Does that make a difference? No, it doesn't. Oh, yeah, that one. All right, so that should produce no result. Oh, all right. Produces no matches. Actually, I probably said that in the question. Somewhere. Oh, yeah. All right. So, gave you an example here of what to do for that. What else? We can have a look at Q5, which is one of the PGSQL questions. Obviously, they don't need 2 things submitted. Everything has to be in here. And here you can see that I've set things up so this is actually going to work properly even if you load this thing multiple times. So you have to put PGSQL code. If you create other functions, then potentially you can use drop function if it exists, and then create or replace your helper function or your helper view, and I'll put them up here. Alright, that's fine. But as long as q5.sql can load each time you run check, no problem, because that's how we're actually going to test it. We're going to do this and count the number of paths that comes out. So obviously if you get a syntax error, then that's a problem, isn't it? So you need to go fix it before you can actually run the tests. Alright, so what was Q5? It was PLPGSQL function. Oh, that's right, that counts red and yellow cards. Question 4, I think, had the instructions had the, aha, they still do, what the hell? Where am I looking? Ah, these are the wrong instructions. These are the instructions for when it was a view in the original version of this sample exam. I thought I'd fixed that. Let me just check here. Oh, where's the exam paper? Exam paper question 4. Yeah, okay, it's correct here. Clearly, I need to update my exam work.zip file. My exam paper.zip file. Right, so Q4 is supposed to be a function, blah, blah, blah. Huh, that's interesting. We'll do that in a moment. Right, so what else did I want to say? Let's see, what was it? Exam preview. Okay, so what you do in the exam, you do that unzip. You will always have to do that regardless of where you're working. If you're working at home and you want a copy of the exam paper at home, you can also unzip exam-paper.zip. Yeah, okay, so we've got these prog question directories, we've got these written question templates. Oh, I did have a quick look at one. Let's see if any of them are different. I think I've set them up in the wrong directory. Yeah, so I think they're all set up so they've got the right number of things. So the intention is that you type I might even put ... type your answer or replace this by your answer. Now the database dump, it won't be footy.dump as I said. Check script. So what you have to do at the start of the exam is create and populate the database. And of course, you need to run your server before you do that. Then answer the question, submit each answer as you complete it. All right, sub-exams. I always get asked about subs. Sub-exams are only available to people who are absent from the final exam and have documented medical serious reasons for not attending or not taking the exam on the day, and you've got to have done reasonably well during the semester. I'm not interested in giving subs to people who've pretty much done nothing during the semester. Even if they take a sub, unlikely to pass, or will definitely not pass, and especially since the exam's only worth 40%. If you do get a sub because you are sick on the day, you have to make yourself available for it. As far as I know, subs are in mid-January, stupid time. But then, if it's going to be online, even if you've gone away for Christmas, you can't go too far thanks to COVID, but you can take it wherever you are, as long as you've got a network connection. If you don't show up to the sup, then you get 0 for the exam. I don't want to run endless sups into the middle of term 1. Okay, so what didn't I cover there? Ask your questions now. You've got 5 minutes. And if I've covered everything, beauty. Let's see what happens. Oh, actually, one thing I'm not sure. Oh. While I'm waiting for questions, I'll just... Cool. All right, so that tried to run the script and obviously didn't work. All the tests failed because there was something wrong with the script, and something wrong with the script was a syntax error. Oh, what? No module named Psychopia. Oh, yes, good point. All right, I didn't set up... yeah. All right, I know what happens. This is an important point too. I'm glad I did that. When you're doing the prac mark, how much do we have to factor in efficiency? I don't know. It's up to you. If you want to sit there for 3 hours waiting for your question to be checked, that's obviously a problem for you. But like I said, there's a 2-second time limit. So if you can't do it, will there be any more prac exercises released before the exam? No, I've run out of time to write more prac exercises. I think this prac exam gives you enough prac exercise. Yeah, all right. So user bin Python 3 is the path name for Greed and probably the VLab machines as well. Where would you recommend to find practice material? I don't know, go back and do assignment 2. I've got some suggestions in yeah, good question. Yeah, go back and do the assignments, go back and do the earlier prac exercises. If you did them at the time, you've probably forgotten them. If you didn't do them at the time, then jute problem, sure, if you can squeeze a prac exercise out of a jute problem. Is there any chance we'll... Yes, you will. No, I want to finish all the marking by next Monday. Yeah, getting back to the point here before I run out of time, this is the path name on Rig. It's not the version, which is not the right version. Ugh. I think I had a version called Python 3.7. All right. If I use this, then I'm pretty sure this is the one that this has to hatch from. Right, so you just need to give the full path name of the interpreter. Let's hopefully that will be, yeah, all right. So that's run correctly to some extent. I didn't have a problem with PsychoPG2, so I actually found the right Python interpreter to get that. Why aren't the scripts run using the Python 3 command? Well, they are effectively. You don't, if you have to create a table. Can if you like. You're not going to be so fussy about defaults. Unless the question specifically asks for them, you don't have to worry here. Let's go Q7, BIQ7. So, whoa! Oh, there's another. God damn, so many bugs. So these scripts all have that at the front, and that's going to run it using user bin Python or using Python 3. That should have had it there. That's annoying. Of course, that's not going to work on my machine because the Python interpreter has a different name. But if you really want, of course, you can run the script yourself like that, so it'll run. But the actual testing scripts don't use that. They just run the script as a standalone type command. So let's see, test/start.sh. So they're just doing /Q7. If you feel more comfortable running it as Python 3 Q7, then you can go and change all the testing scripts. All right. Quickly ask more questions if you have any, because that session's going to time out in a couple of minutes. One thing about running it with the Python 3 command, if I have to change the Python 3 command because I want to change these, then I have to edit all of the testing shell scripts. If it's built into the script, then all I've got to do is change it in one place. Where do you store your real beard database? Yeah, funny. It would definitely not be Excel. And what do you mean an SQL DB? Postgres is an SQL DB. MySQL is an SQL. Why not 3 hours exam though? Oh, because I'm giving you a chance. Yes. Yeah, why not 3-hour exam? If this was in the lab, which is where I'd like to run it, it would definitely be a 3-hour exam. Since you're doing it at home, I mean, I've run extended exams over the past 2 terms and got good feedback from students, especially in term 1. It was a 24-hour exam. And a couple of students sent me emails saying it was the best exam they'd ever done because they could take a break, blah, 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 and so on. So I think these extended time frames for you working at home is good. Oh, the other thing he liked about it was the fact he wasn't stuck in a lab with a whole lot of other people typing and the sound of hammering keyboards wasn't there. Of course, if we have them in lab, then we can invigilate. Forest is not spelt that way. That's actually the name of a town in Victoria with a double R. All right, if there are no more questions, it's 12:05, so we can go. All right, so I may, if